So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Superhuman podcast I listened to by Ken Wilber, which was an introduction to his 10-week course that I'm not going to take at this time, partly because I don't have $1,000 and I'm just sort of unfolding my own capacities, and that's what I've been doing for the last year. So what really resonated with me about his podcast was that a lot of it is what I've been doing for the last year. By talking to myself in self-dialogue, I've unfolded a lot of my capacities. The capacity to stay out of the psych ward while having a crisis, the capacity to go to California for 5 months, the capacity to taper off medications and feel clear, the capacity to talk to myself every other day on average for a year and say a lot of new things and discover a lot of new things. And like Krishnamurti says, it's discovering that's important and then dropping it, not trying to actually discover something and hang on to it. So I feel that's actually the process that helps one unfold one's capacity. So I'm wondering about if I'll be able to unfold the capacity of being able to communicate this to people in a way that they can hear and communicate it to the right people and with the fullest intention of wanting to be of service to other people because of how I've been able to unfold my capacities. And maybe just sharing this process will help people unfold their own capacities, which might actually eliminate some of the need for respite. Like, for example, if I never need respite because I just talk to myself nearly every day, well, then that might be something that some people might be able to do for themselves. I don't know. That's not what I was going to go into, but Ken Wilber's podcast talked about how we have to awaken our own capacities. They're not there. We don't even know what they are until we awaken them. And I feel like that's what I've been doing. And I'm actually pioneering awakening my capacities in my own way because I'm not depending on others to do it for me or tell me how to do it. I've just been talking with myself and having dialogue with myself, and that has actually, I feel, produced the right resonance in my nervous system to be able to then do what I say, I feel, or I discover. And so the discovering actually gives the nervous system the strength to also do what it needs to do in daily life. So I talk on video, but I also have a daily life that I'm doing stuff as well. And I'm finding that the talking to myself is helping me. And they'll say, oh, if you have a goal, tell a friend, tell your friends and family, and that'll make it easier to do. Well, if one is always making discoveries for oneself and talking to oneself about it, it's sort of like telling a friend. It's like telling your best friend, which is your own nervous system. That's your best friend. That's what's going to allow us to move towards unfolding our capacities and our gifts, is really by unfolding them in our nervous system. And the power of the human voice, it's one of the biggest powers in the universe. And when we're able to use it to awaken our own capacities, not just by looking around and reading what's online to do, but actually discover it for oneself and give voice to that, it really strengthens the nervous system. That's what I've found. So I wonder if I even need this superhuman capacity course. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see, but I'm just going along with my own discoveries for now, because as I do this step by step, it's like a very small increment of strength increase in the nervous system instead of being where I am now and then reading stuff that is so far off from where I might be at right now. It's sort of like trying to lift a 300-pound bench press or something when one's just getting started. So I think that if we don't make our own discoveries, going along with what other people discover can almost mess up the process in a way. And I feel like we need to transcend fear of discovering these capacities, because if we're afraid and fear gets interwoven in the discoveries, then the mental health system is right there to help us figure that out. And it's not often a good result. And one thing the webinar did teach me in a way is that everybody has a contribution, even if it's partial. So the mental health system has a contribution, but it's partial, so there's something beyond it for sure. So maybe there's a time and a place for it for a lot of people, but there's got to be something else for people to be able to move out into, and also something like a respite where people can choose to have a less invasive alternative if they don't really need the psych ward. And we don't even know which people need the psych ward, because right now that's all there is. So if people really need help, that's where they go. So the mental health system isn't bad, it's partial. Luckily, the part that I experienced the most was actually really awesome, and I don't even think of it as the mental health system at all. It's just a wonderful community of people under the guise of mental health, and those are the people that I care about the most in this world, besides my family. So yeah, I really don't like what the system part of it, the real mechanical, robotic, unthinking part of it is doing to people who are so wonderful and being nourished by, say, the Clubhouse system or something like that. So I wonder if we can develop beyond it and not fight it. So can something be developed beyond it, like a respite? Not actually trying to fight to make the structure of the system better, but just make something better that people can develop into or utilize instead, and not be developed into a chronic, lifelong mental patient. And it's really a lot of work to avoid being turned into that lifelong chronic mental patient and the trajectory that that creates. And I've worked really hard to avoid that. And at one point in a video, I showed a side-by-side of what I looked like when I first got out of the hospital the very first time 6 years ago. And had I still been on that trajectory, I don't even know. I wouldn't be alive, I know that. So I wouldn't have been able to keep going like that for much longer. And I didn't. I went back to the hospital and changed medications, but I think that that initial insult to my nervous system from those initial medications made everything else afterwards even more seemingly necessary. But how necessary was it? I just don't think I responded well to those long-term antipsychotics. I know I didn't. And anyways, I won't go into that, but I feel like there's something beyond, and we can develop that. And Ken Wilber uses the word integral a lot, and I wonder if there could be such a thing as integral mental health. And I wonder if some of us are, if we're able to move into our superhumanity and unfold some of our gifts, if we can then utilize some of the energy that we have access to help others to do the same somehow. And so he calls it superhuman operating system, and I kind of like that terminology. And I think he talked about how if we just listen to his 10-week course or something, it's psychoactive. And I really like that idea of just listening to something, how it's psychoactive. It is. Anything we listen to is psychoactive. Even when I talk so much about epimemetics and things, those are all psychoactive. And when I talked about how words that we repeat in our head are actually language viruses, they're having a psychoactive effect. And then we need psychoactive substances to slow down our thoughts or do all these things. But really the initial psychoactive substance is words and thoughts and things like that. So I wonder if my self-dialogue is somewhat psychoactive. It is, of course. If any word is psychoactive in a way, then all of these words are psychoactive, and I like that. And if it is psychoactive, I just wonder if it will move some people to create their own superhumanity. And I'm talking about my superhumanity even though I've just been off meds for 1 month. But I'm sort of back in that place before I was ever labeled of being acquainted with that process before it was ever pathologized, and how it did feel like awakening of superhuman capacities, and just looking back at that original experience and that blueprint to wonder what some of those capacities were. And I can actually think back to that time and sort of map out, oh, what was I moving towards? What wasn't good for me? What was bad? Blah, blah, blah. And actually kind of figure it out again from the original blueprint. Not from all this intermediary stuff that happened in between by being medicated. And I really feel we need some of us to be superhumans and then use that to develop something new. Not just use our powers to fight the system, but just to really develop new things. And unfortunately, then we end up having to like beg for funding from people. But I feel like if some of us as superhumans were able to create something like businesses or put our ideas together and really create a pool of ideas and then collectively work on it. And that's why I kind of like the idea of the Pure Potential Project. It's like, just put all your ideas in a pool and let's put our brains and our hearts and our souls together and see what we can create to actually create some wealth, to then actually create a respite center instead of trying to beg for funding. We need to create that funding ourselves and then heal our friends. But that's difficult because perhaps maybe not enough of us are healed to have enough of us who are sort of the business and idea-minded people. I know I'm not. I'm sort of an idea person. I'm starting to do this online course on social enterprises, and it talked a little bit about having like a this person and a that person and a that person. I'm definitely the idea person. I don't know how good I am at carrying things out. Maybe because I'm having so many ideas that the carrying out is just talking about my ideas and insights and things. So it doesn't really leave much time for the rest of it. So having other people with different capacities would be really helpful, because I feel like when one goes through map consciousness or gets acquainted with their superhumanity, they're like a puzzle piece and they need other superhumans to really maximize their capacities and potentials. Because superhumanity is not an egoic consciousness. So there's no like me success separate from everyone else. It actually is interdependent. So we actually have to find our puzzle pieces, our brain homologs, or our brain twins, and our brain triplets and quadruplets and quintuplets and blah, 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 in order to really do this. Because I feel like the new superhuman is actually humans really thinking and working together. And one of the benefits from going through some of these experiences is that I notice when I learn about people who are advocating for change or trying to create something else, they very often think exactly like I do. Yet I've never met them. We've had similar experiences and we come to the same realizations and insights of what needs to happen. So seeing that we have the same vision of what needs to happen, we can really work together to create it. It's not like we have to like convince people. We put our energy, if we're working on this type of thing, we put our energy towards convincing the system. But really, if we put our energy towards supporting each other to really co-create and maybe create some businesses or something, then we could actually have a lot of funding and really maybe create funds to help people create more of these respites who are able to do that in different areas. So I think I talked before about having like a pool of insights and things and just putting them together, because they're downloads from the universe. They're not downloads for our ego. They're downloads from the universe to sort of grab out of the quantum hologram and record and share with each other, because they're new memes, they're new thoughts in a way. They're thoughts we didn't think. They're thoughts the universe thunk through us. So that sounds really profound. What are the thoughts that the universe thunk through you? And share them, and we'll probably have this big pool and we can sort of harvest the ones that are really actionable and see which ones really overlap. So if I share 100 universal thunked thoughts, and I don't know if I said 100 or 1,000, but 1,000, and someone shares 1,000, and another person shares 1,000 and 1,000 and 1,000, and then we throw that in a program and we see which ones are the most often used, then we can actually see what the universe is trying to tell us by working together on this. Not like, oh, this was my profound thought and this was my profound thought about my life. It has nothing to do with our personal lives. It's a new pool of thinking and thoughts from the universe for us to then pass along to each other, so we start seeing in different ways. And we who go through these experiences of the mental health system have to do this together to create like a collective epimemetic and epigesturetic matrix of context that we can then move in, and it's something new and we don't have to refer to the system at all, and then we can just move in creating that. So I think that's important. I sort of want to have dialogue with others, and I had a really good dialogue with someone the other day, and maybe just sort of having dialogue with people and posting the dialogues so then people can read them and see what is happening in dialogue, and also posting and sharing insights. So there's Twitter for like, what's happening, or what are you doing? Well, what did you download from the universe today? What just arose in your brain without your conscious effort, without your will, without your desire? It was just there. You just had an epiphany. People with this type of consciousness have eureka and epiphany moments like 100 times a day. And I feel like we're meant to share that in order to get some of that circulating, to just change our brains from this personal ego, I have my own personal thoughts, which are just from the collective pool that we've shared between each other, to really understanding that we're thinking with the universe and together and sharing that together, and that our minds aren't separate, they're not personal, and yet we keep them personal, so we create our personal little lives, and that creates all this havoc. So anyways, Ken Wilber says, be a whole human, and that will change every activity that you get engaged with. And I also realized too, can we change autocorrect? So sometimes I've noticed with autocorrect that it changes it to something kind of negative. Like say, I don't even know an example, but I'm typing something and it corrects it, and what it corrects it to is sort of like the most common way of using that, or the most common autocorrection based on that mistake. So I'm wondering if we can almost level up autocorrect, so the correction actually goes to like the most positive thing, because that's the thing people are most often typing. So I'll just make up an example, and it's not exactly right, but if somebody was typing awful and they spelt it wrong and then it converted it to awful with the right spelling. Well, imagine if somebody was typing awful and they spelt it wrong, but it corrected it to full of awe. And that's not quite right, because it would never correct to that, but it's just an example of it might correct to the more positive thing. And I'm not being clear with that, and I'm not clear with that exactly, but there was some, and I'll try and find some examples where it's like, and it's not even autocorrect, it's when you're typing and it picks the next word for you in the sentence. And sometimes it's like a negative connotation, like that's what people are typing most often, with those first word combinations in front of it. And I think he also mentioned Kant, and Kant said, when anybody suffers, I suffer. And this happens in map consciousness. It's part of like the law of being in map consciousness. We really feel things. And Ken Wilber also said a superhuman practice changes all of humanity. So this is where I'm like, work on my superhumanity or work on helping humanity. And I don't know if there's really any difference per se, or if I feel that just talking to myself for this year will change the conversations I have when I go back home, and I'll have a sense of what I want to create when I'm there and who I can create it with. So we'll see. And actually, I could go eat pie right now, so I don't know if I'll make another video today, maybe, but for now, I'm gonna go eat some pie. It's fresh made. So goodbye. I'm gonna eat pie. And I thought of a funny word, transformation. Instead of pioneer, pie in here. So, pie in here. If you ever want to read something written by somebody who has 100% the opposites of my views, read natashatracy.com. Her articles are just unbelievably pathologizing. And yeah, for example, there are really 3 reasons mental illness patients are non-compliant. 1. The medication isn't working and their illness convinces them to go off their medication. The medication isn't working, but the side effects are intolerable. Their medication is working, they're experiencing wellness, and so they think they no longer need their medication. Blech. Anyways, ugh. And she's actually a person who receives services. She has a mental illness and blogs about all this stuff. And she calls people the patient, the patient, the patient. Ooh. I'm thinking, yeah, Superman's dead, yeah, is it in my head, yeah, we'll just laugh instead, worry about the weather, like, doesn't anybody ever know? Doesn't anybody ever know? Doesn't anybody ever know that the world's a subway, subway, that the world's a subway, subway. And Sarah thinks she's died here once before. She's crazy. A pop-up book of flowers from grade 4 are driving her insane, and no one knows why she's sad tonight. No one can help her find, crying, crying. She couldn't afford the view, crying, crying. These automatic flowers won't do. These automatic flowers won't do. Do 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 do. Another brick, another window frames confusion. Her garden blooms, but Sarah can't see straight. She's drinking herself blind, and no one knows why she's sad tonight. No one can help her find, crying, crying. She couldn't afford the view, crying, crying. These automatic flowers won't do. These automatic flowers won't do.